you're putting in a 6'8", 6'9" guy that's playing on the wing that could be your power forward, your small ball power forward, and your starting crew small forward. But outside of that, I just can't argue against Andre Drummond, because Andre Drummond lets you get second chances. A guy that would get you 4 second chances at shooting, and your team is averaging 60% from the field amongst their superstars when they're on the court together. That's ridiculous. That means you're shooting almost 75% from the field. And with this offense, just adding Andre Drummond to start off games, not even to finish games, at the end of the games, you're just going to punish teams downhill, and you might even play KD at center. But to start games where you could just throw bruises at LeBron and AD, it's phenomenal what they can do. If you had to place your bet on which happens, not which one you want, but which happens, which one happens, Booch?
I think Otto Porter Jr. I think he's very realistic, and everything you said is very valid. I agree with it, Eve. Like in terms of, KD needs a rest. You have that guy that, he could come in, he could
A
do it.
bootleg version of him, not the same,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
similar.
no,
Something like
I know
it.
exactly what you're saying, and play multiple positions,
Right.
cover multiple positions. He could play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They want to play that small ball lineup. He could do it.
Right.
You're
Like
talking
what
about
we
somebody
hoped for Roberson. Like Roberson couldn't hit a corner three to save his life. Now with this guy shooting wide open, shooting unguarded, what would Otto Porter, a 3-point field goal percentage be on this team?
He's a 40% 3-point shooter. So you're talking about the Joe Harris effect now. I mean, Joe Harris was always hitting his threes, but obviously number one in the NBA this year because of obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons. He's shooting in a wide open gym.
Yeah, so you have a 40% shooter in Otto Porter Jr. who's done that on rebuilding Chicago and Washington teams his whole career. You bring him to Brooklyn, he's playing with a big three. Joe Harris swings it to him in the corner if he doesn't like the look that he has. That 40% is going to be 46%.
And no disrespect to TLC. I'm not mad at any of his contribution based off of the level of a player that he is. But if you could swap TLC minutes for Otto Porter minutes, I think that's a pretty big win for the Nets. Even though it's not what Drummond does a whole lot more, but it's cheating if you get both.
Yeah, I mean, two things about that. I mean, first, the Porter thing would be obviously full circle because that was one of Marx's restricted free agent offers, and we saw him go back and get
Sean Marks
Crabbe,
made him rich.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I'm curious because you've obviously been around like a bunch of players, management, agents, and I saw recently that Blake has the same agent or under the same umbrella at Excel with Jeff Schwartz, who I know played a big role with the Nets when D. Will was there.
Right.
And I know that Blake has the same agent as I think DJ and also Drummond. And I'm wondering, I mean, we've seen that Rock Nation obviously have a big role with the team now. Like, how much does the agent stuff come into play, especially when it comes to like buyout guys and that type of thing?
Of course, I mean, and that's what Sean Marks was trying to do when he first started here was build relationships with agents, treating their lower tier players and clients with the utmost respect. Like I mentioned, giving them the flowers to their families and things like that, showing them that the Nets are a first class organization. When it comes to the relationships, look, I liked to call this team the Rock Nation Nets last year. That's really who they were, and ironically or not ironically, Jay-Z Hove is the CEO of that company. He's the founder of Rock Nation from Brooklyn. So
he had to give up shares of the Nets to become that.
Yeah, so last year they were the Rock Nation Nets. There was at one point, even before Marks, where Jeff Schwartz had about 7 players on the team.
Yep.
Wow.
So of course, these guys they talk to their agents, the relationships, it all comes full circle, like you said, Sam.
And Drummond fired Pelinka. That was his agent, and Drummond fired him. So I don't know how that relationship going to the Lakers is going to be. So, all right, last thing on all of this, Nic Claxton. What does all of this do to Nic Claxton, and is it wrong or right, Pooch?
It's right. He's just got to stay healthy, brother.
Yep.
He's the real deal. I mean, this kid, he could do it all. For what you want in a modern big man, this kid could do it all.
Prototype.
Yes, exactly. I mean, rim running, catching those alley-oops. The kid could jump out of the gym. He could dribble the ball if he really wanted to. They're not going to do that because they have basically 3 point guards on the floor at all times. But he can dribble the ball, and he can hit a jump shot. If they let him do it, he can hit it. Like that southpaw dribbling. Don't underestimate that, and don't underestimate the fact that the point guard of the team is also a southpaw as well.
Yep.
That lefty connection is very important, more important than people think. It's hard for righties to defend those lefties. So when he sets that pick and he's rolling the other way, the unexpected way that the defender's anticipating, and he's catching those lobs from James Harden, it's real pretty. I mean, look, 32 points in 32 minutes. That's the one thing with Blake. I hope that Clax doesn't lose any time because of this, because he's earned his keep in a very small sample size last year and this year. But also, something I said coming into the season was give Nic Claxton 10 games and he should be a starter on this team.
No, I trust Spencer Dinwiddie's scouting. He said that Jared Allen would be a top 3 big man. I believe that's going to happen. He said that this kid has more talent than everybody on the team that's not Kevin Durant.
Kyrie
Irving is on this team.
We talked about it too. Like, people are comparing Jared Allen and Clax, and they're kind of different players. I trust Claxton around the rim a little bit more.
Not only that, I think that I think Jared Allen is a center, and Claxton is positionless basketball. He looks like a kid that was a guard in his early years, had a growth spurt, and he's still kind of growing into his body. He's a late bloomer. He's added muscle, but I almost feel like he needs time to add bone density. He looks like he's going to get hurt. Almost every game he plays, and he plays hard too. He's not afraid, but he's going to have to sit. They're going to have to protect him. Obviously, a lot of people are going to get load management time off. So people are going to play no matter who we add to the team. But I even Nash said, that we look at him as a development player that's going to grow in our system. I kind of think that was Nash knowing who he was going after and saying and kind of being realistic with us that he's not for right now. Is that a wrong way to look at it, Pooch?
No, I know what you're saying. Although I do think him and DJ are going to split time eventually at the very least. And the thing is, that's going to bring the best out of DJ because he's not going to be winded. He might be able to actually jump, if he's only playing 18 to 20 minutes a game. Like
he's 34. He's no spring chicken doing all of this.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So if he splits time, he's not playing 28, 29 a game. If he's splitting time with Claxton, when he's actually out there, he's going to have the energy to do those things that they need him to do.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to bring the worst out in him, kind of like what we saw last year where he really couldn't move, or very early this season where he was missing rotations because he was exhausted. He was winded. His legs weren't there. Something I appreciate about Claxton and Bruce Brown and these guys, even TLC, like the Nets clearly haven't gotten up for the teams below 500. So you see these young fellas that are looking to make a name for themselves in the league,
right?
Playing winning culture, and trying to make a name for themselves. They're playing hard. They want to be on that court. They want to earn their keep on this team, and that's what Nic Claxton is doing right now. That's what Bruce Brown is doing right now.
Those are the nights that you want a Claxton to play, is against Atlanta to just go chase after their puppies out there chasing after each other. The big dogs don't have time for that. So I see what you're saying. Pooch, before we let you go, are we a championship team? Don't just say yes or no. If the answer is yes, if we're gonna touch touch the Larry O'Brien this year, tell me why, and if not, tell me why not.
They're winning the chip this year. As long as everyone stays healthy, they're winning the chip. Because there's no team that's as talented as the Brooklyn Nets since, that 17-18 Warriors team. This is the most talented team in the NBA in the last 3 years, at the very least. Something that I had lunch with Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith back during the Jeremy Lin Nets days. We're talking. I said, "You think they could squeeze in? You think they could do any? Can they give teams a run?" And look, you take Chuck and all that. You could take their word with a grain of salt on TNT, but when you're sitting behind closed doors with them, they looked at me and they said, "Look, young man," they said, "at the end of the day, whatever team has more talent is going to win this thing." And I'm looking at this Nets team right now, and I'm saying, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, DeAndre Jordan, now Blake Griffin, the best three-point shooter in the NBA with Joe Harris. Who's stopping that?
Nobody.
I don't care about defensive issues. You score 130, they're going to score 140.
Right.
So
right.
It's one of those things where I just don't think anybody can match up with them. People ask me, Pooch, who's covering Embiid? I said, well, who's covering Harden, KD, and Kyrie, and Joe Harris? Like who on the Bucks? Like who's covering Giannis? Okay, well, who's covering Brooklyn's big three, and then that guy in the corner shooting 50%?
Right.
Pooch, I got to ask you one final really quick thing that I'm just curious about, because it's kind of been like an under the radar Nets thing. Is I'm just curious, do you think that the buyout guys are kind of filling the need that they would have looked for if they tried to trade Dinwiddie, and or do you think that like at this point Dinwiddie?
We didn't even talk about Dinwiddie. My God, go ahead.
No. I mean, I know. It's super quick. I'm just curious if you think that they want him back, and if not, will they trade him, or at this point are the buyout guys basically filling what they would have tried to trade for him anyway?
It's tough. The whole Spencer Dinwiddie situation is difficult because he has that player option. So you ask, like, what is his value? If you're another team, you're saying I want at least that 1 year commitment that he has left on his contract.
Right.
At the very least, if I'm giving you an asset, I want some sort of commitment. And then if you're Spencer Dinwiddie, you're saying, am I really going to play this game with fire after a partially torn ACL and enter the free agent market and opt out after basically a season that I don't know if he's going to miss the whole year, but he's missing the whole year at this point, as far as we know. So it's one of those, like, it's hard to tell. Like, I see what they're trying to do with the buyout guys. Sean Marks has done this very well, trying to revitalize guys' careers. Amon Shumperts of the world, the Andre Robersons of the world. I don't think it's really necessarily working with those two specific players, but look, they've picked up, I think, 24 guys this year, 24 players on their roster. Their record is 26. I anticipate that number to go up, and answer your question, fill that void of trying to find a playmaker, somebody that could just score off the bench, feed Blake those lobs. But at the end of the day, Sam, they're going to have one of those big three on the court at all times, and that's all that matters.
Yep.
And with the Dinwiddie thing, it's like this. There's probably a team out there that's going to want Dinwiddie to get traded into their cap space. Have the be able to overpay him to keep him, because there's a lot of teams that need a lead ball handler like Dinwiddie. Draft picks, they would probably prefer Dinwiddie to a chance at using a couple of draft picks, because he's definitely an NBA level type point guard. I'm positive the Nets are getting phone calls, but the only leverage they have is the fact that a lot of teams that really need Spencer Dinwiddie are capped out. And I don't think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to turn down the person who gives him the most money. He could parlay this into a max contract, which is not a crazy max contract.